Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I am your host, the One Take Man. On April 3rd, 10 years ago, the movie Battleship had its worldwide premiere in Tokyo. It then went on to premiere in various parts of the world, in waves, if I may say so myself, um, all throughout the next month and a half. The movie, if it is known at all today, is mainly known as a flop, having had a disappointing box office run and mixed to negative critical reception. Unfortunately for it, it wasn't even a particularly bad, a particularly bad or noteworthy flop. So most film historians really have no reason to mention it, to mention it in any in any particular detail. However, I still want to talk about it because I think at least some of its premises hold potential for a potential redo of the of this movie. What are these premises, you may ask? Well, I'm thinking about having a violently surprised flotilla of good guys having to fight against a similarly sized flotilla of bad guys. The movie taking place over Renpack is a good idea in and of itself as well. One that I look forward to adapting into my redo suggestion. For those not in the know, RIMPAC is short for Rim of the Pacific Exercise, a joint military exercise conducted by the U.S. Navy, where every country with a Pacific coast is invited to also join, and that international flavor will add a little bit of drama to my own suggestion, or to my own spin on how this movie should be like. Uh, and by that I don't necessarily mean that I want the movie to be bogged down in clerical bickering. Nor do I mean that an international alliance would use the opportunity of a military exercise in order to in order to conduct an in order to launch the opening salvo of a maritime war. My intentions are neither that petty nor that expensive, at least not initially. What I'm thinking of instead is maybe you can have a flotilla at one part of this exercise being ambushed by a rogue flotilla. After the good guys get jolted and realize that they are actually in an active combat situation during this military exercise, they then pull together and fight this rogue flotilla. That rogue flotilla doesn't necessarily have to be aliens. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. I think Universal Pictures, or whoever did the Battleship movie, did Aliens because they made the typical Hollywood mistake of assuming spectacle will cover any narrative fault. That is generally a bad idea, given I said it's a common mistake, but it is a particularly bad idea in this case, because it ruins what made the initial board game, the original board game, interesting. As someone who has played various variants of the game in a whole variety of formats, though somewhat intermittently, I can tell you that what makes Battleships interesting isn't its graphic design or anything like that. The game itself is actually quite abstract, and often actually works better the more abstract it is. What instead makes Battleship work as a game is tension. You can absolutely combine spectacle with tension. However, works that rely on spectacle mainly derive tension from the question of, is this enough? Is this will this new hit or this new stunt by the good guys do enough damage to incapacitate the bad guys? With Battleship, you never have that tension. You always know that a hit will do some kind of damage. And you always know that if you hit certain ships a certain amount of times, those ships will sink. That is, that is basically a given. Instead, the question Battleship relies on to create tension isn't is this enough? But instead, that question is this correct? Whenever you want to hit, whenever you launch a projectile to a particular square, does that square have a ship on it? That is where the tension comes from, and that is also what the movie needs to translate in order to be an effective adaptation of the game. Conversely, that means that the movie can't be a pure action flick. It'll have to be more of an action thriller, with two flotillas that can't see each other but are still working towards taking each other out. And in fact, in many ways, it actually is. I think this approach is better at reflecting the realities of modern naval combat, because most warships, particularly those of developed countries, can launch attacks that can destroy targets located beyond the horizon. So you can be killed without even realizing what is trying to kill you. That is really the kind of tension that will make this movie stick with its audience, and is, for my money at least, a perfect translation of the game. What I think would ratchet up the tension just a little bit higher is if all the surviving ships in the good guy flotilla come from different different navies with different combat procedures and different operational thresholds for a whole slew of events, and therefore the good guys will have to agree on some given standard if they are to actively overcome their current predicament. That would explain to some extent at least the initial success of the villains, because the villains going in are already a united front with a clear goal they want to accomplish, whereas the good guys have some team building they have to go through before they reach that point. As for who the villains would be, well, I kind of intended them to be a complete mystery. Keep this movie a little bit open-ended should it prove itself successful enough to spawn a sequel. But I do know who the good guys are supposed to be. They will be the commanders of the surviving good guy flotilla. And before you ask, yes, of course the good guy and bad guy flotillas will have the same lineup as the game's starting lineup. That is literally a no-brainer. That will help. That will be really helpful in terms of getting people in the right, and getting on board with this, premise and with this translation. As for who the commanders would be, well, aside from them being international, aside from them being an international assembly, I'm thinking there could be co-leaders of this little flotilla, namely a Russian and Australian commander, who would constantly butt heads as to what they should do next. There could also be a Chinese commander in that, in this particular mix. Maybe someone who would play peacemaker between the Russian and Australian. And I also want the Chinese commander to be the last of the good guy ships to go down. As for the other ships, I'm thinking token US vessel, probably the first one to go down, and let's get some South American representation in there as well. Give some veteran Latino actors something to do. That is if you want to do the classic 5-ship lineup. If you want to do another one, well, you could very easily do that. If you also want to tie certain abilities to certain ships, you could also do that, or certain projectiles to certain ships. That is also something you could do, and that is also something that would ratchet up the tension, provided you know how to do it. And yeah, that was that was basically it. Those are my broad strokes, as well as an explanation for these broad strokes. Concerning what I would do if I had to make a movie based on the Battleship board game. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, well then please leave a like, and maybe even share this video wherever you think others will like it as well. If you have anything you'd like to add to what it is I just said, the comment section awaits your input. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. Ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.